Good morning, my name is Nehemiah Spalon, or Nemo. Some of you may know me. I will be doing my refutation on We Do Not Need to Consume Dairy Products by Melanie McGurk. Is that her name right? No? Melanie McGurk. Yes, I knew this. Sorry about that. To go over her supporting claims were, first, that the dairy industry is almost as cruel to its animals as the meat industry, and cows suffer greatly. 2, dairy is not vital to your bones as you were taught when you were young. And 3, dairy is just plain bad for your body. I will be supporting my refutation by stating that first, Ms. McGurk's first claim is not a claim of fact, and her supporting point doesn't support her claim. 2, Ms. McGurk's second claim contradicts what she originally said, and her supporting points are misinformative. And 3, by stating the link between dairy and acne and what IGF-1 is. So my first claim is that Ms. McGurk's first claim is not a claim of fact, and her supporting point doesn't support her claim. Before I begin, I'd like to state that the definition of mastitis. Mastitis is a name for an inflammation in the breast. This comes from breastfeeding.support. So Ms. McGurk supports her first claim by misinforming us of mastitis. She states that humans can be transferred mastitis from cows, and offers no evidence that mastitis from cows can be transferred to humans, and only talks about how it's treated. In an article called MRSA Transmission Between Cows and Humans by ncbi.gov states that this suggests that transmission of these isolates between humans and cows, although the direction of transfer, so from cow to human or from human to cow, could not be proven. In humans, mastitis is more common in women who breastfeed and is caused by, quote, a baby who is not emptying the breast properly or enough, or an oversupply of breast milk. This comes from breastfeeding.support. So this information on mastitis fails to support her first claim that the dairy industry is almost as cruel to its animals as the meat industry, and that cows suffer for it. Ms. McGurk also states, to support her first claim, that cows are mistreated from birth to death by Human Society of the U.S. She informs us that if cows have calves, males will be used for veal and as breeding bulls, and females will become dairy cows and begin breeding. This appeals to our morals, right, which in turn means that it is a claim of value. In Com 135, Professor Kirkman stated that claims of fact can only be supported by secondary claims of fact or facts. Thus, this claim of value cannot be used to support her claim of fact. My second supporting point is that Ms. McGurk's second claim contradicts what she originally said, and her supporting points are misinformative. In the introduction, Ms. McGurk stated that dairy is not as vital to your bones as you were taught, and then she later states that calcium being crucial to bone density is false. Now, I want to explain what dairy and calcium are. Dairy is defined as any food or foods made from milk products of animals or produced in the mammary glands. This comes from thedietplate.com. Calcium, simply put, is a mineral found in many foods. Right? This comes from the Office of Dietary Supplements. So, we see that dairy products can contain calcium, but not all calcium products are dairy. Ms. McGurk states that calcium does not improve bone strength, but bone density rises only 1 or 2% with increased calcium consumption. This is true because it does not improve bone strength. It maintains it. In the same 2005 pediatric study that Ms. McGurk used, states that a consumption of 1,500 milligrams per day for children 9 to 8 is needed for prevention and maintenance of bone mass, and that additional calcium is most exerted. So, calcium is a mineral needed to maintain bones and teeth, not improve them. Lastly, in the second supporting claim, Ms. McGurk starts to list an alternative list of food products to get calcium. And although this is factual and helpful, it's more informative than a claim. But Ms. McGurk failed to explain that the reason why we drink milk as our main source of calcium is because, according to a Harvard study, dairy has the highest concentration per serving of highly absorbable calcium. Lastly, my third point is I will be explaining the link of acne and dairy and what IGF-1 is. First, hormones in dairy cause acne, not dairy. Acne is caused by, quote, high glycemic foods and insulin. This comes from ncbi.gov. So we see that dairy products alone don't cause acne. And we can see this in products such as organic products that lack those hormones, 2% of whole milk, and things like raw milk from grass-fed cows. So we see that, again, that dairy products don't give acne, just the hormones in the dairy products. Also, genetics play a role in how we process and tolerate dairy. We see this in people who are lactose intolerant, that, you know, to say one person may have no trouble while the other person breaks out just thinking about drinking a glass of milk. Lastly, Ms. McGurk failed to explain what IGF-1 does. So IGF-1 is insulin growth-like factor, and it's ever present in our bodies. From birth, well, newborns without IGF-1 are smaller than babies with. The lack of IGF-1 in babies results in smaller brains, acromegalia, which is basically underdevelopment of facial bones in the hands and small feet, and it also causes an underdevelopment and weakness of the muscular system. We are all familiar with IGF-1 in puberty. IGF-1 peaks during puberty and declines with advancing age. This comes from the International Journal of Endocrinology. So essentially, this IGF-1 factor that Ms. McGurk stated being bad for us is actually good for us. It actually promotes our growth. To summarize, I supported my counterclaims by stating that one, Ms. McGurk's first claim is not a claim of fact, and her supporting point doesn't support her claim. 2, Ms. McGurk's second claim contradicts what she originally said, and her supporting points are misinformative. And 3, by explaining the link of dairy and acne and what IGF-1 is. Thank you.
All right, structurally everything was clear at the beginning, and then you kind of start previewing the preview, and it gets a little overdone and complicated. As you get to each point, you've got a separate set of responses that you're giving, and I think you are giving us more structure than we need. You just need to be clear on the claims when you're making them. The mastitis issue, I thought that you did a good job on suggesting that causality is really someplace other than dairy. Your argument there was clear. The notion that it's being transferred from cows to people, you kind of poo-poo that notion. I'm not exactly sure your proof on that was great. You're relying primarily on the alternate causality to explain away the link, and that's okay, but if you had some additional evidence that suggested that transfer through the enzymes or the antibodies or the bacteria in the cows is unlikely to produce that, I think that would be a little bit stronger. Your analysis of the mistreatment argument seems reasonable. You're suggesting that this is really a value claim and it doesn't advance the main proposition about the need for dairy products. Instead talks about a moral question concerning the way that cows are utilized, and I thought that was a legitimate press on that. Why we're getting a definition of calcium in dairy so late in the process seems a little unnecessary. The calcium issue does become important because you are in essence arguing that it is a necessary supplement, but it's not for the purpose of adding bone density, but maintaining it. I thought that was a reasonable distinction, that in essence, the absence of it in a useful form is going to be problematic. You don't really explain what those problems would be, but you do point out that milk appears to be the source that has the greatest amount of calcium in it in a usable form compared to some of these other foods. For example, I think this would be one of those places where you could do a comparison to some of the vegetables that she talks about and says, well, how many cups of X would you have to eat in order to get the same amount of calcium? And what's the likelihood that you're going to get kids, especially growing kids, to eat 15 bowls of collard greens compared to 1 glass of milk or 2 glasses of milk a day. I think you can make that argument a little bit more clearly and powerfully if you included those comparisons. The acne argument, again, we're relying primarily on kind of a counter-causality argument with the IGF-1 issue. There is a relationship to the hormones in the animals, but you kind of skip over what that connection is and just suggest that, look, this is a necessary hormone, it's at peak during this particular time. That explains what the source of this is, and you kind of minimize the impact of dairy on that by suggesting Gesundheit, that it's really kind of a genetic sort of thing, and some people are more likely to have a reaction than others are. That's an okay argument, although I do think you could use a little bit of evidence on that particular point. I think vocally it sounds really good. You need to look at us a little bit more, and one of the problems is because you've got everything over-organized, you were doing more reading than you really want to do. Instead of telling us what your argument is, you're reading the argument. All right, thank you.